couple demos during that initial talk. Then we'll talk about the architecture of DNN and what it takes to actually develop modules. All right, so this is kind of the meat of the presentation. And then we'll actually look at this custom module that I've got and actually look at the code and kind of take it apart and look at the layers of it and see what's involved in actually building a custom module in DNN. And then at the end, there's some development concepts. These are kind of the more advanced stuff that you'll get into and other things that you have to deal with when you do module development. And then I got some tips and tricks and some other stuff. The style that I follow with my slides is that the slides have way too much information on them, and they're really there for reference. So, go back, download the slides off my website, and I got a link at the end, and just use it as a reference, for everything we did, kind of a reminder for what we talked through. And there's actually stuff in the notes section of the slides and a lot of pieces too. So, when we talk about .NET-Nuke, basically, it's what I would call a live CMS, content management system. When you log in, if you're in a role, if you're in a role that gives you permission to edit things on the site, you get edit icons, and you can actually change the data on your website live. I mean, there's really no staging interface or anything like that in .NET-Nuke. And you got a site up, you log in, and you can start editing stuff directly. You can add pages, drop modules on pages, add content to modules, all that kind of stuff. So it's very much an interactive environment. One of the really powerful characteristics of DNN is that it's as I call it, modular, extensible framework application. A lot of sort of flexible words here, but the idea is that DNN uses a set of dynamically loaded user controls. So when you build a module in DNN, what you're building is a set of user controls that get dynamically injected into the page. So pages that you create don't actually exist anywhere. There's no page that has your content on it. The data is all in the database, and it all gets packaged together and injected onto a page, into a container at runtime. There's a provider model built into .NET-Nuke, which allows you to switch out pieces of core functionality. So for example, if you don't want to use SQL Server, you want to use Oracle or MySQL or something like that, you can switch data providers, or you can switch the provider you use for rich text editing on the screen. You can switch membership providers. It doesn't really matter. I say it doesn't really matter. There's a lot of choices for providers that are available, and more of the core of .NET-Nuke is becoming provider-based. So they're actually splitting out, unhard-coding the functionality and creating these provider-based interfaces that allow you to switch out core functionality of the system pretty easily. And then a module loader mechanism allows easy extensibility, and this is really what we're going to talk about today. Is the idea that if it doesn't come out of the box in .NET-Nuke in terms of functionality, you can buy or build, or there's a lot of free modules out there. You can just obtain a module somehow and add that functionality to your website that you want through a module. So this idea of flexible modules, there's an easy installer process. You can build virtually any functionality you want into a module. I mean, it's a web application created by building user controls that you can install into a portal, and it'll run. It provides functionality. So I'll show you what I mean too. So the major components of a .NET website. At the top level, you've got portals, and one of the things that made .NET, I think, catch on really fast at the beginning is that, it's actually based on an example project that Microsoft put out called the iBuySpy. I think it was the iBuySpy website, and then it turned into the iBuySpy workshop, and then Sean Walker took that and turned it into .NET-Nuke. And he actually released it on December 24th, 2002, so Christmas Eve. And it's kind of funny how they released version 5 on December 24th, 6 years later. So I had a feeling that they were waiting for December, I was right. I went and looked on December 24th, and there it was. Yes. So I started to say one of the really powerful things about .NET-Nuke is it's virtualizable. So you can run as many portals in one installation of .NET-Nuke as your hardware and your memory and so on can handle. So it's very often used by web host providers, people who sell services or whatever, sell websites. They advertise websites in the newspaper or whatever, and they'll create a little stable of skins, and they'll just sell chunks of this installation of .NET that they got on their machines, their hosted machines. And they can run as many websites as they want. Each of them are individually skinnable and customizable. So an installation of .NET can have as many portals on it as you care to run, as your hardware will support. And then within a portal, you have pages. And pages are the things that make up the menu structure inside of .NET. So if you look at most websites, you'll find some sort of a menu structure. And that menu structure with its drop-downs and the levels that you can go down through are created by the pages and a hierarchy of pages that you create yourself. So pages are your portal organization unit. And then modules are information containers on pages. So you can have several modules. Modules are things like text HTML, links, maybe an events calendar, a blog, a forum. Forums are actually a single module. Actually, there's a bunch of modules involved, but you install one thing and you get forums on your website. Forums are a very complex application. So modules are the way of adding specific pieces of functionality to a website. And as I mentioned, this idea of a live CMS, all your online configuration and content management is done by role. So the roles that you create on your portals are completely up to you, how you name them and what they're used for, completely up to you. But once you put people into roles, and you define the way that your pages and modules are configured with roles around them, then you can control very finely what people can do on that site. So, any questions about .NET itself? You know, the kind of the idea behind it, what it is, why we have it. So, why do custom module development? Well, there's a number of ways of adding functionality to .NET, and if you look at the 4 bullets, I kind of order them in order of preference. Okay, so the ones toward the top are the ones you want to do first. So you can to add functionality to a portal, you can install a custom module, right? That you typically are going to buy, or you're going to find a community one that's free out there. If the ones that are out there don't do what you want, you can build a custom module, which is really the focus of what we're doing today. And very often what people do is they'll find a module, or they might buy a module and get the source code with it, and then extend that module. You know, they'll take it and reuse it. And that's a very, very common pattern in .NET module development. We talked about providers a little bit, so you can also, kind of at a higher level of functionality, you can switch providers to change core functionality within .NET itself. And then, because it's an open source project and the source code is available, you can actually modify the .NET source code if you want to. I recommend not to do that, because as soon as you change a line of source code, you're on the hook forever to maintain, like, let's say, a bug fix, a security, high importance security bug fix comes out. Now you got to go and get the new source code and fish out what the changes were and make those same changes in your own code base, and it's a losing game. I mean, if you really need to change the core functionality of .NET, what you ought to do is try to get somebody on the core team interested in your idea and get them to build it into the core application itself, rather than, you can do it, but I don't recommend it. And Daryl's nodding his head. Okay, so as I mentioned, one of the common starting points for people is to take existing modules and reuse them. Right? Even if it's not exactly the same thing, if you find a module that sort of resembles what you're trying to do, just take an existing module and start renaming things. It's a lot easier to start from an existing working point than it is to build something completely from scratch. And in the book, I actually walk you through using the starter kit to build a module from scratch, and you'll see as you kind of go through that narrative that it's really not very straightforward. It's much easier to start from an existing module.
So it worked for me.
Starting from the starter kit?
Yeah, from the book. You said it was difficult.
So the key concept to keep in mind here is that what you're really trying to do is reuse the core functionality that's already there. There's a lot of plumbing inside of .NET Nuke, lots of services that are there. You want to reuse those services without recreating them. Okay, that's kind of the whole idea. When you're building a module, you have total access to everything inside of .NET Nuke. Make use of it rather than building it from scratch. So I really look at DNN as